Jesus says, God is your divine treasure, the eternal wealth that surpasses each earthly ownership, the everlasting inheritance that in no way fades, and the unfailing source of lifestyles that cannot be stolen, diminished, or destroyed, for God Himself is the finest present a human soul can ever maintain, and to apprehend this truth is to walk into the innermost thriller of love, grace, and eternal security. Whilst Jesus calls God your treasure, He's reminding you that the things which men call riches, gold, silver, reputation, and fleeting honor, are but fragile dust as compared to the unsearchable riches of His presence, for what is gold that rusts, what is silver that tarnishes, what is honor that passes with the applause of fellows, when the honor of God is brighter, richer, and eternal. The soul became not created to be happy through cash or crowns, it became created to be satisfied with the aid of its Maker, and this is why Jesus spoke frequently of the dominion as a treasure hidden in a subject, a pearl of brilliant rate, something worth giving up all else in order to possess, because when you hold close that God is not handiest the giver of blessings however the blessing Himself, you realize that nothing else compares. God is your divine treasure because He by myself offers love that never ends, mercy that in no way runs dry, forgiveness that cannot be measured, and wish that cannot be extinguished. To name Him treasure is to apprehend that the wealth of heaven has been placed within a tane of the poor, the damaged, the standard, the outcast, and that treasure isn't a cloth possession however a residing dating, the fellowship of the soul with its Creator. A treasure hidden now not in vaults of stone but in the heart of faith. Individuals who chase after the treasures of earth frequently discover themselves empty, for irrespective of how a good deal they collect, they remain unhappy. However, folks that find out the treasure of God find in Him a fullness that leaves no lack, for He's the bread of existence, the living water, the pearl of eternity, the light of the soul, and the crown of everlasting joy. While you live with God as your treasure, you research that your worth is not described by your possessions however. Via His presence, not by what you own but through who owns you, not via what you preserve in your arms but through who holds your heart, and this truth sets you unfastened from the chains of greed, worry, envy, and melancholy, due to the fact that the treasure of your life is relaxed past the reach of moth, rust, or thief. To preserve God as your treasure is to stroll in peace that cannot be defined, for even in sorrow you are wealthy in desire, even in trials you're wealthy in power, even in weak spot you're rich in grace, because the treasure of God does now not fade while the arena darkens but shines brighter in the night of anguish. God as your treasure way that you have inside you a wealth of knowledge, for His phrase Jesus says, God is your divine treasure, not a ownership of gold and silver that fades away however the everlasting wealth that abides all the time, the inheritance that no thief can touch, the reward that no typhoon can shatter, the unfailing mild that by no means dims, for in God there's a fullness past human measure, a richness past earthly creativeness, a glory past all crowns of men, and this treasure is obtainable freely, no longer to the strong or the wise or the effective alone however. To each soul that seeks Him with a humble heart, when you apprehend God as your treasure you wake up to the fact that your deepest starvation is not for things but for His presence, your private thirst isn't always for water but for His Spirit, your finest longing is not for fame but for His love, because every different choice is but a shadow pointing closer to the extra delight observed only in Him. Treasure is what a man prizes most, what he guards maximum carefully, what he pursues maximum passionately, and Jesus calls you to allow God Himself be that treasure, due to the fact while He's your treasure your heart will follow Him, your lifestyles can be anchored in Him, and your eternity can be secured by Him, in a world where many measure wealth by way of possessions and financial institution accounts. The Lord whispers that proper wealth is measured by means of religion, through love, by way of peace, through the presence of God within the soul. For what use is it for a person to gain the complete world yet forfeit his soul, but when God is your treasure your soul is safe in His hands. And though the treasures of earth may additionally sparkle for a season they wither with time, but the treasure of God simplest grows greater radiant, for He is the living treasure who renews His children daily, who comforts in sorrow, strengthens in weakness, heals in brokenness, and carries in trials, making every valley an altar and every mountain a testimony. He's the treasure that teaches you to undergo. For His desire is greater than melancholy, His mercy extra than guilt, His forgiveness more than sin, His light more than darkness, and His reality greater than lies. And when you grasp that God is your treasure, you cease to degree your existence by means of possessions, by means of applause, or with the aid of achievements, however by means of the unshakable fact of His presence that dwells with you and in you for all time. Consider the myth of the man who determined treasure hidden in a subject, who offered all that he had to shop for that subject, for he understood that the treasure turned into worth more than anything else he owned, and this parable points to the reality that when you find out God as your treasure, nothing else compares, no sacrifice feels too amazing, no loss feels too heavy, because what you benefit in Him outweighs all of it. This treasure isn't always saved in vaults of stone, however, inside the vault of heaven, but additionally inside the Vav.